Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next sessions. So after this fantastic inaugural, we have another interesting talk by Sanji Mishra. She's the Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer of Alnylam Pharmaceuticals. Sanju fell into the cybersecurity field 25 years ago. Her subject matter expertise in security engineering, security analysis, and being a team leader has helped her into being a chief information security officer roles at General Electric Treasury, Praxair, and Linde. The skills she gained as a technologist are in the same skills required to present to boardrooms and have a seat at the table with business leaders. So, in this talk, Sanju will review her 25-year-long career path with all of you, and she will share her learnings and interesting stories with you. Unfortunately, Sanju couldn't join us for this live session. Instead, she has graciously agreed to send her presentation and video, which she has already recorded. So we will be playing the video now. And if the participants have any questions, Sanju has agreed that you can contact her via LinkedIn and ask her the questions. So we will now play the video of Sanju Mishra.
Thank you for joining today's session. Today I'm going to talk about my career journey to become a CISO in a financial field, industrial gas, and now currently in the biotech industry at Alnylam. So if I look back at my college days, I wasn't interested or knew anything about cybersecurity or IT. I was actually focused on biology. It wasn't until I took a part-time job in a computer lab that got me interested in computers and helping students with their computer problems, as well as learning about IT myself. So when I left college, I really wanted to focus more on the IT side, and I took a role at Yale University Medical Labs, helping to automate their database of test questions for medical students, and then moved over to end user support and network support and general IT consulting over the 10 years. My first role into security was at Aetna Health Insurance. I came in as a security analyst or engineer, helping to build out a secure website for consumers to have more functionality. And I was promoted to Internet Security Manager pretty quickly while I was at Aetna. From there, I moved over to General Electric Treasury. They had a CISO role open, and I also became the CISO for Praxair, which merged with Linde about 2 years ago. And then most recently, as of last week, pretty new, I took on VP of Information Security at Alnylam. I'm heavily involved in STEM programs, so science, technology, engineering, and math programs to help build the pipeline of future cybersecurity professionals like yourself. And I always say, don't fear change, embrace it, and love what you do. And that's how you're open to new opportunities, and that's where they come from. So often people ask what I look for in a career, and I put it down into three things. One is great people. You want to be engaged and excited about coming to work every day. And I always say that people don't leave companies, people leave people. You leave the organization, you leave your management, but not necessarily the type of work that you do. Speaking of work, it's got to be challenging work. You got to contribute, make a difference, and be interested and love what you're doing. You're spending a lot of time at work. And lastly, you want to be compensated fairly so that you're able to take care of yourself and for others in your family or in your community. So I always say you need to know what really drives you, what motivates you when you're looking for that new role or your first role out of college. So if I look back about, let's say, 5, 10 years, we think about all the IT changes that have happened, whether it's wearables or technology changes. Really, there's a lot of things that are coming through or will be coming through that require cybersecurity and a secure mind frame. So if you think about it, like by 2023, A lot of people already have a smartwatch or will be wearing one. We'll see disruption from Uber or Lyft or other ride-sharing services. We may have a package delivered by drone in the next few years, or we may stay in a robotized hotel as well. So all this great technology and progress also requires individuals like yourself to help secure it and keep risk down. So if we look at some of the other things, we could be working alongside of a robot, or could we buy a bionic ear or use Bitcoin or cryptocurrency for payments more readily? So a lot of provocative things happening, which comes back to the need for more cybersecurity professionals. If we look at things like domestic robots and how they could be hacked, or citizenship, or cars being automated, all these things can be looked at to function properly, or as hackers like to look at it, how do we break it? How do we get it to do what we want to do? So that's why we need a good set of skills and intellectual curiosity in cybersecurity. If I look at the current threat landscape, you'll see this is not news to you. You know that attacks are a growing industry. Most of the attacks are from outsiders, and the motivations around the attacks are listed here. I do think globally we're going to see more and more attacks on the supply chain, similar to what we saw with SolarWinds in 2020. And if we look at the tactics, the malware is still the key delivery mechanism. We've been saying this for 5+ years now. And the foundational things like weak passwords, stolen passwords, using privileged access inappropriately are all key things in the ways that hackers come in. So what does that mean? What does that imply for all of us? It means that phishing remains the prevalent way that hackers attack, so we need to make sure that our employees are aware and we have technology in place. There's more and more social engineering. So people calling up for IDs and passwords on the phone, and employees and people at home giving them out. Having physical access to a system where you have a ton of time to damage the system. And we need to make cybersecurity awareness part of the culture, whether it's in your home or it's at work. It needs to be considered a data safety culture. And then lastly, how do we protect those cloud assets? We're hearing more and more things are going to the cloud, but that doesn't negate our need to be able to secure access to them and how they're presented in the cloud, and data loss prevention techniques around that. So when you think about all those things, how will you help to secure the future? You know, we're all women here in this room talking about cybersecurity, and if you look at some of these statistics, you'll say, well, we have gotten better. If you look at cybersecurity field and number of women, we were at a paltry 11% in 2013, and now we're up to 20% in 2019. So while it's better, it's still not representative of the cultures that we live in. If we look at the representation of women CISOs in the Fortune 500 companies, there were 13% females in 2017, and now there's 20% a few years later. And this last statistic is specific to the United States, but in 2014 there was 1 million cybersecurity jobs that were left unfilled. And now in 2021 we're estimating 3.5 million jobs unfilled. So there's a lot of opportunity for everyone here in this room in the cybersecurity space. I'm often asked, what would I tell myself 20 years ago or 15 years ago? What would I do differently? And I put these on this page because it really got me thinking. It's really okay to take risks. And sometimes we get too comfortable and we don't take those risks, but you really need to take the risk in order to advance or to think differently, to think like a hacker. I I say that we should use the organization's culture as a strength or your friend. Get comfortable with how the organization functions. How do you affect change in cybersecurity within the culture? And this is a good one. It's not always a technical issue. There's often times that as technical people with strengths, we don't look at the process or the people side of things. And a lot of times that's where we need to make the improvements. This one here, cybersecurity is an enterprise risk, absolutely critical. It takes cybersecurity out of IT and puts it in the business risk framework, meaning cybersecurity is seen as a real business risk. There's a dollar amount brand damage that could be caused if you have a cybersecurity incident. I can say in my Praxair Linda world, if we had a cybersecurity incident in our operations side, there's a potential that it could be a safety issue if people are hurt or there's an explosion. So you need to frame cybersecurity from a business perspective and not just an IT side. This one is always a very important one that I love to tell students. Continuing education is part of your job. So once you leave university, the learning doesn't stop. Really, it just starts. And I say that because the hackers change modalities and methods. There's new technology that comes through, so we need to stay current in all that. So continuing education is one way that we can do that. This one I can't say enough. Business knowledge is essential. I think sometimes we get stuck in what's comfortable for us in our IT space, but you need to understand, what does the company or government do? What are its principles? How does it operate? So when you go for interviews and speaking to other companies, I say make sure you do your research. In today's internet, there's no reason that you can't find out about a company, its products, its culture, its values, how it's in the news before you get to the interview. Have others advocate for you. And what I mean here is, in roles that I post in my company, we often get hundreds of thousands of resumes. And what speaks to me is a colleague may come to me and say, I have a great person that would be perfect for this role. And they bring that resume forward. That to me says so much that someone would vouch for you and that they're willing to stick their neck out and say, give this person a chance. So I would say make sure you have a good personal board of directors or advocates on your side. Tell people, your professors, your colleagues, relatives, when you're looking for a role and what you're looking for. So if they hear something, they can advocate for you. And definitely reach out to people who work in that company, in the industry, get a good sense of what the culture is like and potentially what kind of roles are coming up to be filled. And being new to your careers, I think sometimes we forget that we have a lot of valuable skills and a lot of them are very transferable. So I say that if you have really good analytical skills, problem solving skills, intellectual curiosity, those all transfer really well into a cybersecurity role or into a STEM type role. So focus on those strengths rather than saying, I don't have 10 years of experience or I didn't take that programming class. There are tons of skills that transfer very well. Know your value. So here I mean, when you're going into a company and they come up with a problem, let's say they don't have a very security aware population. Their employees are constantly bringing in USB drives and causing malware on their computers. Talk about how you could solve the company's problem. What would you do? Just gently put it out there, and then they'll start seeing you in the role doing those things. And then lastly, be prepared for the interview. You really should be able to answer, why are you the right person for this role? If you're able to do that early on in the interview, then the rest of the interview can focus on your qualifications rather than discovering more about you. And that makes for a much more effective interview. And I think you'll be looked at highly in the interview process. So keep selling your skills to be the top contender. And sometimes when we talk about selling your skills, I hear from people new to their career that they shouldn't have to sell their skills. Their resume has the best schools, the best grades, the 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 best of everything out there, the best internship. Why isn't that enough? And the reality is, you have to be able to take your accomplishments and also the way that you think and approach problems and sell that so that the employer says, yeah, I can see this person working here. That's what you're looking to do to be the top contender in these roles. So I thought this was an interesting uh, graph to bring up because when we talk about career success and what are cybersecurity employees looking for, you'll see that the men are represented in green and the women in this lighter green. Their percentages aren't that different across the four areas that were surveyed. So people want to be a go-to specialist. They want to be the source of information for their colleagues. They want to build a strong professional network. And they'd like to be assigned a leadership position or a team lead position pretty early on in their careers. So they're pretty similar, men and women, for what they look for in their roles. So I'm going to leave you for the last couple slides on some the rules, I call them. So when we talk about the first law of holes, that's we've always done it this way. We got to think inside the box. Well, I challenge you to think outside that box because no innovation comes from thinking inside the box. Good problem solving and keeping on top of the hackers is from being outside that box. And then rule zero, all of us here need to be professional skeptics. That's actually part of being a cybersecurity professional. Think about the what if scenarios. How could I break this? Not necessarily just functionally how things should work, but how can I break the working things? Follow success. Work is something that you do and not a place that you go. I think that's become much more relevant in the pandemic where people can be successful online or in an office. That shows and comes through. Do the simple things well. If there's 5 steps to take to do a 2-step process, let's not overcomplicate the simple. Let's do it well, do it quickly. And then sometimes this is an unusual one for people. Have the conversation. And I bring this up because if you agree early on with your colleague or the business lead. So lastly, I put together a few reminders, and really, it was really to make sure that if you're down and thinking about, I failed in this project or I didn't do this right, it's okay. It's okay to fail. You learn more from failure than you do when something goes successfully. And I always say, work smart, right? A lot of people work really hard, but are they working on the right things? So if you have to pivot and make some changes to get where you need to go, it's okay. That path is all right. And substance is important. I say that snow melts, right? You can have things in different phases and they are affected by stress or pressure, but overall, get back to the foundations. And lastly, you heard me talk about being authentic. Absolutely. Know who you are and what it means to be you and bring that person to school, to work, to home every day and speak up and be heard. So thank you very much for your time today and enjoy the rest of the conference. And if you have any questions for me, please reach out to me on LinkedIn and I will get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, all participants, for tuning in and for listening to Sanju's talk. And if you have any question to Sanju, then you can always ping her on LinkedIn and ask.